At 93 years old, a wealthy woman found herself abandoned by her children in a nursing home. They sold everything she owned and took control of her company, but they had no idea of the vengeful plan she had in store that day, a revelation that would change everything forever. Lucía had always been a strong and independent matriarch, forging her path through sacrifice and dedication. As she turned 93, all she wanted was the love of her children, Giovanni and Sofia, and the peace she had earned after a lifetime of struggles. However, on that fateful birthday, she was met with a painful betrayal, as shocking as it was unexpected. What was meant to be a surprise quickly morphed into a nightmare when she was taken against her will to a nursing home. Sitting in the back seat of the car, Lucía watched the familiar landscape blur by outside the window. It was her 93rd birthday, but instead of a celebration with her children, she sensed something was off. Giovanni at the wheel wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes, while Sofia, beside him, was furiously typing on her phone. Lucía, always perceptive, felt a growing unease. "Where are we going?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's a surprise, Mama," Giovanni replied, his focus firmly on the road. "You're going to love it." Lucía managed a smile, but her discomfort deepened. Something wasn't right. Giovanni and Sofia rarely visited her, and suddenly, on her birthday, they appeared with promises of surprises. In recent months, Lucía had sensed a shift. They began discussing her health and aging more frequently, and often questioned her about her belongings and the house she had lived in for most of her life. She had always trusted them implicitly, raising Giovanni and Sofia with unwavering sacrifice after her husband's death, but now the unease in her chest intensified. "How long will it take?" she asked again, hoping to quell the sense that something terrible awaited her. "We're almost there," Sofia answered, not looking up from her phone. A few minutes later, the car pulled up in front of a large, austere building. Lucía frowned, trying to grasp the nature of this place. When she read the sign at the entrance, **San Giovanni Residence for the elderly ***, a chill ran down her spine, and her heart raced. "What are we doing here?" Giovanni turned off the car, walked around, and opened the door for her. "Mama, you need specialized care. This will be the best place for you," he said, his tone overly soft. "What do you mean? Why did you bring me here?" Lucía asked, struggling to understand the situation as confusion enveloped her. "I don't need this. I want to go home." Sofia placed a hand on her mother's shoulder with a forced smile. "Mama, it's for your own good. You can't do everything by yourself anymore. You need help, and this is the best place for you." Lucía felt a wave of betrayal crash over her. It was as if her world was crumbling. She attempted to escape the car, but her legs trembled and her head spun. "Please take me home. I can't stay here. You can't do this to me," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face, but her cries were ignored as Giovanni and Sofia led her into the building, dismissing her protests. "It will be better this way, Mama. Here you will have everything you need," Giovanni insisted, gently pushing her inside the residence. Once inside, a nurse with a cold smile greeted them and began to guide Lucía to her new room. Each step felt like a battle against the harsh reality forming around her. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, and the feeling of claustrophobia grew with each passing moment. When they finally reached the room, Lucía was horrified by what she saw. It was small, lifeless, with sterile white walls. Nothing there reminded her of home or her life. She turned to Giovanni and Sofia, who were still lingering in the doorway. "Please, I want to go back. Don't leave me here." Giovanni avoided her gaze, muttering something about it being for the best. Sofia quickly waved goodbye, devoid of any real emotion. The door closed behind them, leaving Lucía alone in the room, the pain of betrayal piercing her heart. "How could they do this to me?" she whispered to herself, tears still falling. The oppressive silence of the room echoed the loneliness that began to envelop her. Lucia's first days in the nursing home were devastating. Each morning, she woke up hoping this was just a nightmare, but the cruel reality forced itself into view. The sterile room, the silent corridors, and the impersonal staff intensified her pain. There were no family photos, no memories, nothing to remind her of her former life. Once active and in control, she now found herself a prisoner of a cold, mechanical routine. The infrequent and superficial visits from Giovanni and Sofia only added to her hurt. They would show up with trivial gifts, like fruit or magazines, acting as if nothing were wrong. If their visits were intended as a favor, it felt as though the guilt they should have felt was completely overshadowed by a hollow sense of duty. "We brought you fresh fruit, Mama," Giovanni said during one of his visits, placing the bag down without a hint of concern for the pain reflected in his mother's eyes. Lucia searched her children's faces, hoping to find some trace of the compassion she once believed they possessed. "When can I go home?" she asked, her voice fragile but determined. Sofia sighed and looked away. "Mama, we've talked about this. You need specialized care. You should get used to this place." Her tone was as frigid as her expression. With each visit, Lucia felt the weight of betrayal grow heavier, as if every word reinforced her exclusion from their lives. They were not there out of love. Their presence merely served to maintain appearances and ease their own guilt. The greater agony came in the silences that followed, when the door to her room closed and she was left alone. The stark white walls suffocated her, a constant reminder of the life that had been ripped away. Lucia found herself staring at the clock on the wall, the monotonous ticking echoing in the empty room, a relentless reminder that her freedom had been stripped from her. She recalled her home, every piece of furniture she had carefully chosen, the memories she had created with her children, the sight of them running through the garden, the laughter shared on Christmas nights. All of that now felt distant, like a dream fading with each second she spent in that place. One morning, as she wandered through the gardens of the nursing home to escape her monotonous routine, Lucia noticed a small group of residents animatedly chatting under a tree. For a moment, she hesitated, feeling out of place, but the crushing loneliness compelled her to approach. "Hello, madame," greeted a friendly-looking gentleman named Enrico as he noticed her. "We were reminiscing about the good old days. Would you like to join us?" A wave of warmth washed over Lucia at the invitation, a feeling she hadn't experienced since arriving at the home. "Of course, I'd love to," she replied, settling down beside Enrico. As the other residents shared their stories, Lucia found herself immersed in memories of her own life. They spoke of their pasts, families, and significant moments they had experienced. Gradually, these conversations began to provide her with a measure of comfort, a breath of fresh air amid the persistent pain of her betrayal. Yet even this small relief couldn't lessen the wound in her heart during the lonely nights. Thoughts of her home and the empire she had built through sheer effort haunted her. Lucia, once a strong woman who fought tirelessly to ensure her children's dignified lives, now found herself reduced to a mere patient in a nursing home, a shadow of her former self. The weight of her anguish began to take a toll on her body. Each passing day brought an intensifying fatigue, and Lucia recognized that her struggles were not only physical but also mental and emotional. Even the simple acts of walking to the garden or getting out of bed felt monumental. One night, as she lay in bed listening to the heavy silence of the room, Lucia whispered to herself, "How could they do this to me?" Tears streamed silently down her face. Yet even amid her despair, a small flame flickered within her, a flame of justice, of revenge, of reclaiming what was rightfully hers. Days dragged on, slow and cruel, but amid the nursing home's monotony, a presence began to ease her pain. Alice, a young nurse who seemed different from the others. While the rest treated Lucia with the coldness of routine, Alice displayed a genuine kindness that Lucia had long stopped expecting. One afternoon, as Lucia sat in the garden watching the other residents, Alice quietly approached and sat beside her. "How are you feeling today, Mrs. Lucía?" she asked with a sincere smile. Lucía, having learned to distrust others' intentions, hesitated before answering. "I'm trying to adapt, but it's harder than I imagined." Her voice was a soft whisper of exhaustion, yet tinged with a hidden desperation. Alice looked at her with compassionate eyes and gently touched her hand. "I know this must be incredibly hard for you. Leaving everything you know behind can't be easy. But I want you to know that I'm here, and I want to help in any way I can." Tears welled in Lucía's eyes, and for the first time since her arrival, she didn't feel completely alone. There was something in Alice's gentle tone and genuinely concerned demeanor that made Lucía lower her guard. "Thank you," she murmured, squeezing the young nurse's hand in gratitude. Seeing that Lucía was beginning to open up, Alice continued, "You don't have to face this alone. Sometimes the people around us fail us, but that doesn't mean we should give up." Her words, full of empathy, resonated deeply with Lucía, as if Alice were speaking directly to her pain. "I did so much for them," Lucía began, feeling an urge to share, to vent to someone who, at least for that moment, truly listened. "I sacrificed everything so Giovanni and Sofia could have a better life, and now they've discarded me as if I'm nothing." Alice listened quietly, allowing Lucía to voice her hurt. "Often those we love the most are the ones who disappoint us the most," she said softly. In a gentle, encouraging voice, Alice said, "But that doesn't mean you've lost your worth. You are still a strong and capable woman." Lucía wiped her tears, feeling more at ease beside the nurse. There was something about Alice that brought her a sense of peace, a reminder that despite everything, kindness still existed in the world. "I don't know what to do anymore," Lucía confessed, gazing at the garden with a resigned expression. "It feels like they've taken everything from me, my home, my freedom, even my dignity." Alice, noticing the anguish in Lucía's eyes, squeezed her hand tighter. "You still have one very important thing, Mrs. Lucía. You have yourself. And as long as there is life, there is always a way to fight." These words ignited a spark in Lucía. After days lost in pain and frustration, she began to see a glimmer of hope. Perhaps she wasn't entirely defeated. With time and the right strategy, she could find a way to turn her situation around. "Do you think there's still hope?" Lucía asked, searching Alice's eyes for reassurance. Alice smiled warmly. "There is always hope, Mrs. Lucía. You just need to believe in it, and more importantly, take action. I'll be here to support you in whatever you need." Those words felt like balm to Lucía's wounded heart. For the first time since being taken to the nursing home, she felt a sense of companionship. Alice wasn't just offering comfort, she was ready to be an ally, a friend. In the days that followed, Lucía and Alice grew closer. While the nursing home's routine remained impersonal and mechanical, the bond between them strengthened with trust. Alice became a safe harbor for Lucía, providing advice, emotional support, and the comforting belief that perhaps there was still a way out. One afternoon, after another uplifting conversation with Alice, Lucía returned to her room with newfound determination. Looking in the mirror, she wiped away the tears that had been her constant companions. With a resolute expression, she declared to herself, "I will fight. They will not defeat me." The atmosphere in the nursing home shifted for Lucía. Although the environment still felt oppressive, and visits from Giovanni and Sofia remained sparse and insincere, the bond she shared with Alice gave her the strength to face each day. Yet, the sense that there was more to her children's actions lingered like a shadow in her mind. Then, one late afternoon, something unexpected happened. Antonio, Lucía's third son, appeared at her door. Known for his sensitivity and empathy, he had distanced himself from the family years ago, overwhelmed by his siblings' growing greed. Guilt etched his face, and he avoided meeting his mother's gaze, as if he were acutely aware of his own failings. "Mama," Antonio began, his voice trembling with emotion, "I'm sorry for not coming sooner. I should have done something." Lucía, still taken aback by his unexpected visit, tried to smile. "Antonio, I thought you had forgotten me too." Her voice was soft but carried the weight of months of pain and abandonment. Antonio shook his head, tears welling in his eyes. "Never, Mama. I just didn't know how to handle Giovanni and Sofia. They pushed me away from everything, even from you." He sat on the edge of Lucía's bed, gripping her hand tightly. "I know they did terrible things, and I was weak for not protecting you." Lucía sighed deeply. "They took me from my home, Antonio. They put me here and started selling everything I built. They left me with nothing, as if I had no value anymore." Antonio's eyes brimmed with anger. "I suspected they were scheming, but I didn't know how far it would go." Taking a deep breath, he felt compelled to be honest with his mother. "Mama, Giovanni and Sofia are selling everything you own, and it's not just the house. They have taken complete control of the family business. I found out they forged your signature to do it." Lucía felt the ground give way beneath her. She had sensed something was wrong, but Antonio's confirmation left her breathless. "How could they do this? My own flesh and blood? How did Giovanni and Sofia get to this point?" Antonio lowered his head in shame. "I don't know, Mama, but I do know they're trying to take everything from you, and they won't stop until they succeed." He met his mother's gaze, a spark of determination beginning to shine in his eyes. "But I won't let that happen. Not anymore. I've been cowardly for too long." While the pain of betrayal surged within her, Lucía also felt a new strength rising. She clutched Antonio's hand tightly, as if grasping the only lifeline in a sea of despair. "Antonio, I know they've gone too far, but you're my only hope. I can't let them destroy everything I built with so much sacrifice." Now resolute, Antonio nodded. "I will fight for you, Mama. I won't let Giovanni and Sofia continue with this horrible plan." He glanced around, ensuring their conversation remained private. "But we need to be cautious. They have power now, and they'll use any means to stop us." Lucía took a deep breath, feeling her anger and sadness transform into a burning desire for justice. "So what do we do now? How can we stop them?" Antonio understood that the road ahead would be challenging, but his determination fortified him. "I'll investigate everything. I've already gathered some documents, but I need more concrete evidence. Giovanni and Sofia are not invincible. They may control things now, but they did so illegally, and that will be their downfall." Lucía nodded, encouraged. "I'll do what I can from here. Alice is the only person I trust in this place. She can help us." Antonio smiled slightly at the mention of the young nurse. "Mama, if you trust her, then we'll need her help too. We'll need allies, someone who can keep everything a secret." The next few days became a careful game of patience and strategy. Antonio made regular visits to Lucía, always careful to avoid suspicion from Giovanni and Sofia. Alice, now fully aware of the situation, discreetly assisted them, ensuring they had the time and privacy needed to plan. Amid conversations in the garden and whispers exchanged in her room, Lucía and Antonio devised a strategy. Their goal was to expose Giovanni and Sofia for who they truly were, two con artists willing to destroy their own mother for power and wealth. Though still wounded by her children's betrayal, Lucía felt a new energy coursing through her veins. She was no longer alone. With Antonio and Alice by her side, she had a chance to reclaim what had been taken from her, and above all, to seek justice. Giovanni and Sofia believed they had won, but little did they know that the real battle was just beginning. The days following Antonio's revelation were filled with tension and caution as Giovanni and Sofia continued their increasingly rare visits. Lou and Antonio worked discreetly to gather evidence of the conspiracy, with Alice playing a crucial role in keeping their meetings under wraps. As the fight to expose Giovanni and Sofia began to gain momentum, Antonio understood that a direct confrontation would be too risky. Instead, he decided to continue his investigation quietly, ensuring no suspicions were raised. "Mama," he said, gently holding Lucia's hand during one of his visits, "I'm going to start reviewing the company's documents. We need solid evidence that incriminates them and shows how much they've manipulated everything." Lou, burdened by betrayal, nodded solemnly. "They've taken so much from me. I can't believe my own children would do something like this. But they've forgotten one important thing. I'm still alive. I can still fight." Antonio smiled, though concern lingered in his expression. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Giovanni and Sofia were cunning and intelligent, but their greed had left them vulnerable, and Antonio was determined to uncover their mistakes. As Giovanni and Sofia continued to manipulate the company and sell off Lucia's assets, Antonio returned to the family office where he had once worked alongside his mother. The atmosphere had changed dramatically. The once vibrant corridors now felt dark and oppressive, filled with fear and tension as employees wore anxious expressions. "You know," Antonio remarked to his old colleague Roberto when they crossed paths, "things have changed a lot since Giovanni and Sofia took over. Half the staff has been let go, and the new management, let's just say no one feels safe anymore." Listening to this, Antonio felt a surge of anger, but reminded himself to stay calm. "Roberto, I'm here to figure out what's going on. I need your help to uncover the changes Giovanni and Sofia have made." Roberto, who had trusted Antonio since their days working together, quickly agreed. "I'll help you however I can. What do you need?" "Anything that connects Giovanni and Sofia to fraud or embezzlement. They took control of the company illegally, and I need to prove it," Antonio explained. In the following weeks, Antonio and Roberto combed through the company's documents and transaction records, searching for any inconsistencies that could be used against Giovanni and Sofia. It wasn't long before suspicious patterns emerged. Property sales at absurdly low prices and signatures that, to Antonio's trained eye, were clearly not Lucia's. This is it," Antonio exclaimed, holding a stack of documents revealing blatant forgeries. They used Mama's signature to sell the house for a fraction of its market value, and here they diverted large sums of money into their personal accounts. "It's all right here." Roberto stared at the papers, astonished. They really did this to their own mother. Antonio shook his head, a mix of anger and relief flooding over him. "Yes, and now we're going to expose everything. This ends now." Meanwhile, in the nursing home, Lucia began to notice a transformation within herself. Rather than allowing pain and betrayal to consume her, she found strength in small victories. Each time Alice entered her room for a chat or offered words of encouragement, her determination solidified. She was no longer willing to remain a silent victim. She was ready for the final confrontation with Giovanni and Sofia. One afternoon, while Antonio was secretly reviewing documents in the family office, Alice visited Lucia. "Mrs. Lucia, you seem more determined lately," she observed, helping Lucia settle into the chair by the window. "Something has changed, hasn't it?" With a slight smile, Lucia looked at her friend in confidence. "Yes, Alice. My son Antonio has uncovered the truth. Giovanni and Sofia may think they've won, but they're about to lose everything. We're going to expose them." Alice gently squeezed Lucia's hand. "You are a very strong woman, Mrs. Lucia. If you need me, I'll be here to help, just as I've always been." Gratitude swelled in Lucia's heart. "Thank you, Alice. You've been my guardian angel in this dark place. I don't know what I would do without you." Alice smiled, but before she could respond, Lucia felt a rush of emotion. Antonio is almost ready to act. I just hope Giovanni and Sofia don't do anything worse before everything comes to light. The burden of discovering Giovanni and Sofia's fraud began to reshape Lucia's fate. Armed with the evidence, Antonio was resolved to expose his siblings, though he knew he needed to proceed with caution. Their greed had blinded them, and in their desperation to seize control, they had inadvertently incriminated themselves. Lucía, for her part, prepared emotionally for the confrontation she knew was inevitable. Alice remained steadfast by her side, not just as a nurse, but as her ally, friend, and the only person who genuinely cared about her well-being. "We're close, Mama," Antonio said during a secret visit to the nursing home, bringing with him a folder filled with documents that confirmed the fraudulent transactions carried out by his siblings. "I've already spoken with a trusted lawyer. We'll take this to court, but first, we need to publicly expose them." Lucía felt a surge of new strength coursing through her veins. Despite the fatigue from the long emotional battle, she was fighting "And how are we going to do this?" Antonio asked. "Giovanni and Sofia are preparing for a big celebration at the company. They're going to be honored for something I built with my own hands. I can't let that happen without everyone knowing who they really are." Antonio nodded, fully aware that his mother wouldn't back down. "The company has organized a large event to honor them. It will be the perfect opportunity to expose everything. We'll be there, and at the right moment, we'll present the evidence. They won't be able to escape." As Antonio spoke, Lucía glanced at Alice, who stood silently by her side, attentive and ready. "Alice, I need you by my side that day. You've been my strength here, and I want you with me when all of this is over." Alice smiled, her eyes shining with determination. "I'll be with you, Mrs. Lucía. I've always been here, and I always will be." In the days leading up to the event, quiet preparations unfolded. Antonio and Roberto organized all the necessary documents, while Alice ensured Lucía was ready for the moment. The nurses' support was crucial in keeping Lucia's mind and body strong. Every word of encouragement from Alice reignited the flame of justice within her. Leave a comment on where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Finally, the day of the event arrived. The company was lavishly decorated, with important investors, market figures, and friends of the Marchetti family filling the main hall. Giovanni and Sofia moved confidently around the venue, receiving compliments for their supposed achievements. For them, everything was perfect. Nothing hinted at the impending collapse of their world. Lucía, in contrast, felt the weight of each step as Antonio and Alice helped her discreetly enter through the back of the hall. Aided by Sophie, a loyal family employee, Lucía was determined to catch Giovanni and Sofia off guard. "Come this way," Sophie said, guiding them through a discreet corridor. "I'll make sure no one notices until the right moment." Despite her fragile body, Lucía's mind was focused. Holding Antonio's hand, she murmured as she passed through the corridors that had once held so much meaning for her. "I built all of this, and they destroyed it. But today, everything will be different." Antonio looked at his mother with pride. "Today, the truth will prevail, Mama." As Giovanni stepped onto the stage for his acceptance speech, Lucía and Antonio were ready. Alice remained by Lucia's side, ensuring everything was in place. "We are honored to be here tonight, celebrating our successes," Giovanni began, his smile dripping with sincerity. "In recent years, Sofia and I have worked hard to secure the future of this company, and today we see the fruits of that effort." Watching from the entrance of the hall, Lucía felt a wave of anger and sadness wash over her. This was the pinnacle of hypocrisy. The company she had sacrificed so much to build was being celebrated by two con artists who had betrayed her without hesitation. Antonio squeezed Lucia's hand. "It's now, Mama. Let's go." They walked through the hall toward the stage, and a hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to Lucía and Antonio as they climbed the stairs. Giovanni and Sofia, poised to receive recognition, froze at the sight of their mother standing before everyone. "Sorry to interrupt," Antonio said, taking the microphone from Giovanni's trembling hands. "But before this ceremony continues, there's something everyone needs to know." Giovanni tried to intervene, but his voice faltered. Sofia, next to him, looked flustered, unsure how to react to their mother's presence. Lucía took the microphone, her voice steady as she addressed the audience. "My children, Giovanni and Sofia, have betrayed me in every way possible. They forged my signature, sold my properties, and embezzled money. They exploited my trust and left me with nothing." Antonio began displaying the documents he had prepared, projecting evidence on a large screen for everyone to see: the forged signatures, fraudulent sales, and illegal fund transfers. It was all laid bare for the audience. Giovanni and Sofia stood frozen, their faces pale, unable to defend themselves. The hall, once filled with applause, now buzzed with shock and indignation. The silence was deafening. Lucía and Antonio's revelations had detonated like a bombshell. Giovanni and Sofia, paralyzed by fear and shame, struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. The evidence projected on the screens was undeniable. The forgeries, embezzlement, and illegal sales were all exposed. Murmurs among the guests transformed into looks of reproach and outrage. Family, friends, investors, and former colleagues were stunned, unable to fathom that the heirs of the powerful Lucía Marchetti could commit such betrayal. Lucía, feeling the weight of the revelation, took a deep breath. A mix of sadness, anger, and relief coursed through her. She had finally exposed the children who had taken everything from her. "Giovanni and Sofia have betrayed not just me, but all of you," Lucía said, her voice resonating through the hall. "They used our family name and the company I built to steal and enrich themselves at my expense. This must end now." Giovanni, still in shock, attempted to respond. "This is a farce," he shouted, but his voice trembled. "These accusations are false. They're trying to frame us." But it was too late. Antonio, gripping the microphone firmly, replied calmly, "The evidence is here, Giovanni. You can't escape the truth. You forged our mother's signature, sold her properties for pennies, and embezzled funds from the company, all while she was vulnerable in a nursing home, unaware of your actions." In desperation, Sofia tried to sway the audience. "Don't believe this. We only did what was necessary to take care of our mother. She was losing control, and we needed to take charge." Lucía, fixing her gaze on her children, shook her head. "You left me with nothing, and you still have the audacity to defend yourselves. I trusted you. I sacrificed everything for you." At that moment, Antonio's lawyer stepped onto the stage. "The evidence presented will be taken to court immediately. Giovanni and Sofia Marchetti will answer for their crimes, and all legal measures will be pursued to ensure that Mrs. Lucía recovers what has been stolen from her." The hall erupted in murmurs again, this time with a distinct note of support for Lucía. Investors were rising and leaving the event, while some approached to offer words of solidarity. The carefully crafted image of Giovanni and Sofia lay in ruins. "I gave everything for you," Lucía continued, her eyes locked on her children. "And this is how you repay me, with deceit and betrayal? You do not deserve the name you carry, nor what I built." Realizing there was no escape, Giovanni and Sofia began to unravel. Giovanni, visibly shaken, struggled to maintain composure as his voice faltered. You always controlled us. You always wanted us to do everything your way." Antonio interjected firmly, "It was that way that built everything we have, and more importantly, that kept us united as a family. But you chose greed over values, and now you will face the consequences." Meanwhile, security. Personnel arrived to escort Giovanni and Sofia out, and the siblings stood in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. They attempted to resist, but the evidence against them was irrefutable, and the audience had no doubt about who the real villains were. As she watched Giovanni and Sofia being led away, Lucía felt a mix of deep relief and profound sadness. These were her children. She had raised them, given everything to them, but they had chosen the path of betrayal. Antonio turned to his mother, gently holding her hand. "It's over, Mama. Finally, it's over." Lucía met his gaze firmly and replied softly, "Not yet, my son. They still have much to pay for what they've done, but now we have a chance to rebuild what has been destroyed." In the days that followed, the consequences for Giovanni and Sofia were swift and devastating. They faced prosecution for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. Their assets were seized, and they lost all control over the family business, which was returned to Lucía by court order. With Giovanni and Sofia out of the picture and the company back in her hands, Lucía felt as if a new chapter was beginning. Although the weight of her children's betrayal still lingered, there was comfort in knowing that justice was being served. She no longer had to fight alone. Antonio was by her side, and with Alice's support, Lucía started to rebuild her life. The aftermath of the confrontation brought significant changes, both in the company and in Lucia's own life. Once stifled by Giovanni and Sofia's greed and mismanagement, the business began to thrive again under Antonio's leadership. He made wise decisions that restored the trust of employees and partners, many of whom had been marginalized by the previous management. One sunny afternoon, while visiting Lucía in the nursing home garden, Antonio, feeling relieved by their victory, said, "Mama, things are improving. The company is stronger, and people are starting to believe in our family again." Lucía smiled softly at her son. "I always knew you could do it, Antonio. You have the heart to lead. Now, with everything in your hands, I can finally rest knowing that what we built is safe." Though Lucía still lived in the nursing home, it was now by her own choice. She had formed true friendships there, and with Alice's support, she felt stronger and more secure than ever since Giovanni and Sofia had tried to destroy her. The small network of friends and staff she had built made her feel connected, despite all she had lost. Alice remained nearby, providing comfort and care, becoming more than just a nurse. She was a confident, a loyal friend, and Lucía treated her like family. One morning, while sharing coffee with Alice, Lucía said, "You are one of the reasons I managed to get through this storm. I don't know what I would do without you." Alice's eyes sparkled with warmth as she replied, "Miss Lucía, I'm happy to help, but the strength was within you all along. I just gave you a little push." In the nursing home, Lucía began to be seen in a new light. Once a defeated woman abandoned by the children she loved, she was now a figure of resilience, someone who had found her way back to dignity and justice despite the adversities. At the company, Antonio implemented the changes his mother had always desired, which Giovanni and Sofia had ignored. He rehired employees unjustly fired and revamped policies to create a collaborative and respectful work environment. The finances, compromised by his siblings' misdeeds, were gradually recovering, and the reputation of the Marchetti family, once tarnished, was beginning to be restored. However, the legacy of Giovanni and Sofia still cast a long shadow. Even though they had been convicted, their actions left deep scars on the family and the company. For Lucía, the emotional wound of betrayal by her own children would never fully heal. But with Antonio by her side, she discovered a new purpose: to help rebuild what had been destroyed. One day, while talking to the company's new investors, Antonio brought up something he had been considering. "Mama," he said in a private conversation, "you've done so much for all of us. I think it's time for you to think about yourself, about how you want to spend the next few years." Lucía looked at him surprised. "What do you mean, Antonio?" "You've always worked tirelessly to ensure our family had everything, and I know it has cost you a lot. Maybe it's time to focus on how you want to live from now on. Perhaps do something just for you." Lucía fell silent for a moment. The idea of living for herself was something she hadn't contemplated in a long time. Throughout her life, she had devoted herself to her children, the business, and building a legacy. Now, with life shifting around her, maybe it was finally time to consider her own desires. "You're right," she admitted with a wistful smile. "Maybe I can finally do something for myself, travel, explore new horizons, live a simpler life." Antonio beamed. delighted to see his mother beginning to think about a future beyond her responsibilities. She had always held onto the thought, "You deserve it, Mama. And if you need anything, I'll always be here." Lucía, a dedicated businesswoman, was now beginning to dream again, this time about something much more personal. Alice, who consistently accompanied her during these moments of reflection, couldn't help but notice the change in her friend. "Mrs. Lucía, you seem different lately, as if something has shifted inside you." Lucía smiled, gazing up at the clear blue sky. "I think you're right, Alice. I've spent so many years fighting and worrying about the future that I forgot what it's like to live in the present. Now, for the first time, I feel like I can do that." Alice nodded, pleased. "And what do you plan to do with this new phase, Mrs. Lucía?" Lucía paused, contemplating the many possibilities now unfolding before her. "I've been thinking about traveling. I've always wanted to see the world, beyond business, beyond responsibilities. Maybe now is the right time for that." "Do you have a specific place in mind?" Alice asked, curious. "I've always wanted to visit the small villages in Italy where my grandparents came from. I've also thought about visiting southern Spain to see the landscapes I've only read about in books. Who knows, I might discover new places I never imagined visiting." Alice's face lit up. "That sounds wonderful. I'm sure it will be a transformative experience." At that moment, Lucía made an important decision. This trip wouldn't be just any getaway. It would be a journey of rediscovery, reconnecting with her roots and exploring new horizons. Life had given her a second chance, and she was determined to make the most of it. In the days that followed, Lucía began planning her trip with the help of Antonio and Alice. Even though she still lived in the nursing home, now by her own choice, Lucía felt ready to take the reins of her life once more. She wanted to start with something special, a visit to the picturesque village in Italy where her grandparents had been born. "I see this as a way to honor my history and my family, going back to my roots while also moving forward with something new," Lucía shared with Antonio as they discussed the trip details. Antonio, ever supportive, agreed. "You deserve this, Mama. More than ever, you should live for yourself, free from the worries that have always surrounded you." Alice, who was nearby, smiled as she listened to their conversation. "And don't worry, Mrs. Lucía, I'll be right by your side every step of the way on this journey." Lucía looked at Alice, feeling grateful for the friend who had become such a significant part of her life. "I couldn't ask for better company as I embark on this new phase." As the preparations continued, Lucía began to quietly say goodbye to her past, which had been filled with struggles. While she still met with other residents of the nursing home, their conversations often revolved around memories and life stories. But unlike before, Lucía no longer felt trapped by those memories. She had made the choice to live in the present, and above all, for herself. Finally, the day of departure arrived. Lucía, Antonio, and Alice stood at the airport, ready to embark on the first leg of their journey. Although Antonio wouldn't accompany his mother on this trip, he was there to ensure everything went smoothly. He looked at Lucía, pride shining in his eyes. "Mama, I'm confident this trip will be the renewal you deserve," he said, holding her hands. With a serene smile, Lucía replied, "And you, Antonio, are ready to take care of the company and continue our family legacy. I know I'm leaving it in good hands." Antonio nodded, determination in his voice. "I promise to honor everything you built, Mama. You taught me to fight with integrity, and that's what I'll do." After a heartfelt hug, Lucía and Antonio said their goodbyes. Alice, standing by Lucia's side, waited for the boarding call. "So are you ready for the adventure?" Alice asked, excitement sparkling in her eyes. Lucía took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, she felt completely free. "More than ready, Alice. I'm ready to live." With that, they boarded the plane, leaving behind a life filled with ups and downs, but carrying with them the certainty that the future was finally in their hands. Lucía wasn't quite sure what awaited her on this journey, But for the first time, that uncertainty felt liberating. She was ready to discover, and most importantly, to embrace every moment she had left. With a light heart and a renewed spirit, Lucía set off on an adventure that not only marked a fresh start, but also served as a testament to the idea that even after the deepest betrayals, life can offer new paths to happiness. Upon arriving in Italy, Lucía and Alice were greeted by the clear blue sky of a sunny morning. The refreshing air seemed to usher in a new chapter in Lucia's life, making her feel lighter with every step. The quaint village, with its cobblestone streets, historic architecture, and the gentle murmur of conversation in the background, was a place Lucía had always longed to visit. Now, with Alice by her side, she was finally there, eager to reconnect with her roots while discovering a new side of herself. As they wandered through the village, Lucía felt as though she was stepping back in time, walking through the memories of her family. "My grandmother used to share stories about this place," Lucía said, a nostalgic smile gracing her lips. "She always said that here, people truly understood the essence of community and family." Alice took in the sights, sensing the significance of this trip for Lucía. "I believe she would be proud to see you here, Mrs. Lucía. She knew you would one day return." Lucía nodded, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "I feel more connected to her now than ever. With this connection, I finally feel like I can allow myself something I've never done before, to be happy without worry." The days spent in Italy became a profound rediscovery for Lucía. She took her time exploring the village, visiting local markets, engaging with residents, and savoring each moment with an open heart and a sense of serenity. Alice, her constant companion, infused this new phase of Lucia's life with joy, helping her embrace it without pressure. On one particularly sunny afternoon, while sipping coffee in a small square, Alice asked, "Mrs. Lucía, now that you've returned to your roots, what comes next? What do you hope for in this new phase of your life?" Lucía paused, taking in the scene around her, families strolling by, children laughing, and life unfolding in vibrant colors. "Alice, for the first time in a long while, I don't have a rigid plan, and that feels liberating. I used to meticulously map out every detail of my life, but now I want to see where life takes me." Alice beamed. "That sounds like true freedom." Lucía agreed wholeheartedly. "Yes, and I think that's exactly what I've always been searching for, often without even realizing it. Life has tested me in countless ways. It took much from me, but also offered opportunities to rebuild. That's what I want, not just to survive, but to truly live." As the days turned into weeks, Lucía recognized that this journey was more than just a visit to her origins. It was a chance to close a significant chapter. The place that once symbolized the beginning of her family's story was now helping her wrap up a period defined by struggle and open a new, gentler, and more meaningful one. On a tranquil night, while walking through the hills that surrounded the village under a blanket of stars, Lucía experienced a profound sense of peace. The shadows of Giovanni and Sofia's betrayal still lingered in her memories, but no longer consumed her thoughts. Instead, she focused on the beauty of simplicity surrounding her, the small joys, heartfelt conversations, and new connections she was forming. "You seem more at peace," Alice remarked, breaking the stillness of the night. Lucía smiled softly, gazing up at the stars. "I am. For so long, I carried the weight of disappointment and betrayal. Giovanni and Sofia. They made terrible choices, but I refused to let that define me. I've learned that despite my past, I still have the power to choose how I live, and I choose peace." Sensitive to Lucia's feelings, Alice stopped to look her in the eye. "You're an inspiration, Mrs. Lucía. I never imagined someone could endure what you have and still emerge so strong and determined." Touched by her friend's words, Lucía grasped Alice's hand in gratitude. "I had help, Alice. Without you, Antonio, and all the others who supported me, I wouldn't have made it." Sometimes, what we need most is someone to remind us of our worth and you all did that for me." By the end of her journey in Italy, Lucía was no longer the same woman who had first arrived. She felt rejuvenated, energized, and ready to embrace each day with gratitude and purpose. As the time to return home approached, Lucía realized she wasn't leaving anything behind. She was carrying with her the assurance that, even after the fiercest storms, there's always room for a fresh start. On the flight back, Alice's eyes sparkled with excitement as she asked, "So, what will be your next adventure, Mrs. Lucía?" Lucía laughed, feeling a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. "I don't know yet, Alice, but that's the most thrilling part. Life has surprised me in so many ways. I think I'm ready for whatever comes next." Returning to her daily life, Lucía no longer viewed the nursing home as a place of confinement. Instead, it had become a new launching pad for adventures. She had friends there, a devoted son, and a loyal companion by her side. Above all, Lucía had herself, and ultimately, that was the most important thing. Lucía, once a woman who had been betrayed and abandoned, had transformed into someone who triumphed over adversity and rediscovered her own strength. Amid all life's uncertainties, she understood that there would always be something new to discover, something new to conquer. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to be the first to receive the next video. Share it with your friends and check out the video on the final screen. You're going to be moved